6 months ago, India's ruling party, BJP, was confident.
The BJP will break its own record of 2014 and 2019 and set new record in 2024.
The opposition, defiant.
Finally, the BJP's bluff will be called. All their spin doctoring, all their falsifications, all their fabrications will not come to anything.
As the world's largest democracy went to the polls in April, Prime Minister Modi looked unstoppable.
And I am pretty sure that BJP might emerge with a much bigger majority. How big? Very difficult to say.
But when the results trickled in on June 4th, for the first time in a decade, the BJP fell short of an absolute majority, demystifying Prime Minister Modi's apparent aura of invincibility.
And he set a high target. Ab ki baar 400 par, this time 400 seats. From that yardstick, it's certainly a disappointment for the BJP.
Why does Modi magic appear over? And what will it mean for Modi's third term?
ये कांग्रेस का मैनिफेस्टो कह रहा है.
– 2014, an unprecedented victory as Narendra Modi-led BJP came to power on the promise of rapid development and a clean administration. After decades of coalition governments, a single party won a majority in parliament. Then, in 2019, Modi led his party to an even bigger victory, securing 303 seats in the 543-member parliament. And in 2024, the ruling party looked comfortably set for a third term. But the poll results last month took many by surprise.
I think there was a general consensus, and I was one of those who believed that BJP is roughly close to the majority mark. And I did say at times that I won't be surprised if BJP slips below the majority mark. But I must confess, I never expected BJP to go down to 240.
In the general election that concluded in June, the BJP bagged exactly 240 seats, short of the 272 needed for a majority. Nonetheless, by forming a coalition with smaller parties, the BJP remained the government. The BJP had lost 63 seats from its last election performance, its National Democratic Alliance collecting 293 seats in total. And arrayed against them is an opposition alliance, the Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance, also known as INDIA. The Indian National Congress Party is a major player in this opposition coalition.
Now, if this isn't defeat, if this isn't drubbing, then what is? He's now being forced to be a part of the coalition government, something that he didn't have to do in his previous 2 terms.
Democracy is unpredictable. And he set a high target. Ab ki baar 400 par, this time 400 seats. So from that yardstick, it's certainly a disappointment for the BJP. They have not even been able to win a simple majority.
What were the reasons for Prime Minister Modi and the BJP's confidence heading into the elections? And why did they end up underperforming? Shravan Kumar has lived in Dade Kandana village near Haridwar since he was born. His family has tilled the land for generations, growing sugarcane, millet, wheat and mustard. In 2008, Shravan had taken up a job in a tire factory near his village. That's when disaster struck.
जून 2009 में मशीन में ये मेरा हाथ एक्सीडेंट में होने के कारण ख़राब यानी कि काट दिया गया। उसके बाद फिर कंपनी ने मुझे बाहर हैंडीकैप को रख नहीं सकते जॉब पर, तो इसलिए बाहर निकाल दिया। उसके बाद बस मुख्य व्यवसाय ये कृषि का ही है, तब से बहुत दिक्कत का सामना करना पड़ रहा है।
Shavan believes it is the BJP government that has helped him get back on his feet through its welfare schemes as well as benefits for those with disabilities. So, at the elections, he cast his vote for the ruling party.
मोदी सरकार, जब भाजपा सरकार है हमारी, ये मोदी सरकार ये 2014 से किसानों के लिए बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है और मुझे जो है 2019 से किसान सम्मान निधि योजना का लाभ मिल रहा है, जिससे मेरे जीवन में बहुत अच्छा मतलब इसका लाभ हुआ है।
Prime Minister Modi's prior decade in office was a period of growth for India. The economy expanded by an average of between 6 and 7%. In post-COVID, India is the world's fastest growing major economy. It has expanded welfare, where the Prime Minister claims his government had spent over $400 billion on benefits for the poor.
Let me give credit to the BJP for its welfareism. I think something that went in its favor in spite of its reduced numbers was the fact that some 800 million people were getting free rations, which makes a huge difference to their lives. There were other welfare measures also which were appreciated.
But not everyone is a beneficiary of Modi's economic policies. "33-year-old Amanat Ali lives on the outskirts of a forest some 240 kilometers from Delhi. He is one of the millions of tribals or indigenous forest dwellers. The tribals get food from the forests by shifting or settled cultivation. They depend on varieties of edible and herbal roots, fruits, leaves, and honey. Still, forest dwellers are among the poorest and most vulnerable groups in society.
यहाँ पर हम 25 वर्षों से निवास कर रहे हैं। इससे पहले हम राजा जी टाइगर रिजर्व का एक पार्ट है। लगभग पिछले 25 वर्ष पहले हमें यहाँ पे रिहेबिलिटेट करके बसाया गया था भारत सरकार के माध्यम से।
Forest communities are losing their land to infrastructure and mining projects. In 2003, Vedanta Resources launched a bauxite mining project in Odisha's Niamgiri Hills. The forest dwellers protested. In 2013, the mining project was finally halted following a Supreme Court directive. But forest dwellers still feel threatened.
हम अपनी व्यक्तिगत बात करें तो हमने रूलिंग पार्टी को कोई वोट नहीं किया यहाँ से, और उसका कारण कहीं ना कहीं ये भी है कि रूलिंग पार्टी हमेशा वनवासी समुदाय के खिलाफ काम करती रही है। जंगलों का सर्वनाश करने का अगर किसी ने काम किया है तो वो रूलिंग पार्टी ने किया है और स्टेट और सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने किया है। इसलिए हम उनके खिलाफ रहते हैं, क्योंकि हम पर्यावरण के लिए, जलवायु परिवर्तन आदि के लिए हम काम करते हैं।
In the lead up to the election, the Modi government has been plagued by accusations that its policies favor the rich.
He's largely seen as a leader who is supported by the corporate giants. They are trying to open up more and more areas for corporate development, forest areas, wilderness areas. We can see that in the Himalayas. We can see this huge push to build the railways, to build the all-weather roads, to have chopper services everywhere. And many people I've talked to believe that this is being done in order to open up more avenues for corporate incomes.
The opposition has often leveled the charge that the Prime Minister favors the wealthy, a criticism they raised once again heading into the election.
आप हैरान हो जाओगे, हिंदुस्तान में 22 लोग हैं जिनके पास उतना ही धन है जितना 70 करोड़ हिंदुस्तानी लोगों के पास है। एक तरफ 22 लोग और दूसरी तरफ 70 करोड़ लोग। उनके पास भी उतना ही धन जितना इनके पास, और नरेंद्र मोदी 24 घंटा इन 22-25 लोगों की मदद करते रहते हैं.
And this time, the opposition criticism worked to some extent.
I think on the rural distress side, agricultural growth in India has consistently been 4%, which is like a dream come true from all agriculture economists' perspective. But it was only in the last year that the agricultural growth fell down to 0.4%. That directly had an impact on rural incomes going down and the rural economy not performing as well as was expected. And I think it was the rural economic distress which factored in to some extent building up this anti-incumbency factors.
And whatever failings the electorate felt about the government were pinned to the Prime Minister. By becoming the party's figurehead, Modi turned the election into a battle between him and the full might of the opposition.
The manifesto of the party was called Modi Ki Guarantee, Modi's Guarantee. So the BJP didn't figure everything was Modi. In fact, this is the referendum on Prime Minister Modi. So when you do this and marginalize the party, you also marginalize party workers. So I think within the BJP itself, that vigor, which was the strength of the cadres on the ground, was lacking.
It was all about him. It was Modi's guarantee. The manifesto of the BJP had only Modi's pictures. You had hoardings that was all about Modi. In Hindi, he said "Ek akela," which means I, all alone, all by myself. And I have a lot of respect for the innate wisdom that the people of my country have as far as Mr. Modi and his divisive agenda is concerned.
So, as Modi's speeches became more hard-hitting, the controversy would be associated with the entire party.
और पहले जब उनकी सरकार थी, उन्होंने कहा था कि देश की संपत्ति पर पहला अधिकार मुसलमानों का है.
The opposition revival is powered by the nation's oldest party, the Congress. After getting reduced to 50-odd seats in Parliament in 2019, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi began a journey through villages and towns to enthuse supporters and revive the party. Called Bharat Jodo Yatra or Unite India March, Gandhi walked from the southern tip of India to the northern territory of Jammu and Kashmir, covering over 3,000 kilometers from September 2022 to January 2023. The aim was to launch a movement against what the party called divisive politics of the BJP. This January, Gandhi embarked on a Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra or Justice March, travelling from Manipur in the east to Maharashtra in the west over 3 months.
The India bloc upped their game once the Congress manifesto came out. Of course, Rahul Gandhi's walks across the country also had a positive impact. Here was a person on the street who was listening to people because there's so much of distress in the rural areas and unemployment.
Around the time that Rahul Gandhi began his march, the BJP had their own plan to court supporters. In January this year, Prime Minister Modi opened the Ram Temple in Ayodhya amid huge fanfare. It was a watershed moment in the nation's history. The temple was built on a site where a mosque previously stood. Hindus say the mosque was constructed atop an ancient temple destroyed by Muslim conquerors. So, in 1992, thousands died in communal clashes after the mosque was demolished by Hindu zealots. Restoring the Hindu temple had been a long-time BJP pledge, and when this was finally realized, the ruling party hoped the temple inauguration would give them a boost in the polls. That did not happen. Instead, the BJP unexpectedly lost the Ayutthaya seat.
The Ram Mandir issue, many hardline members of the BJP who have been speaking on exceptionally divisive lines, I'm not taking names, have been defeated in the polls. So I don't think that this kind of extreme stance on what is essentially a composite culture, where people have lived with each other for centuries, is something the Indian people welcome.
What the BJP tried to do with the Ram temple or the Ram issue was essentially they became the self-anointed, the self-appointed custodians of the religion and Lord Ram. There were pictures in which Ram was shown as a little boy and Mr. Modi held his hand and walked him.
The BJP is often plagued by the pall of pushing Hindu nationalism at the expense of religious minorities, particularly Muslims. It is a charge that the party denies, saying it works for the benefit of all.
If you see the beneficiaries of the welfare schemes of the central government for the last 10 years, you will realize that there has been no instance of discrimination vis-a-vis minorities and Muslims in particular. If at all, Muslims, despite being 14% of the Indian population, have been beneficiaries of the government scheme disproportionate to the population. If you see a central housing scheme, we call it the Awas Yojana, about 22% of the total beneficiaries are Muslims. If you see Ujjwala Yojana, which actually is a big relief for women who actually give them cooking gas, you find the Muslims being the biggest beneficiaries. There are almost 20 to 30% more Muslim girls and boys going to schools and not dropping out when it comes to primary and secondary education.
Yet, on the campaign trail, Prime Minister made several controversial statements. For example, he implied that Muslims would continue to be beneficiaries of welfare schemes because they had more children.
पहले जब उनकी सरकार थी उन्होंने कहा था कि देश की संपत्ति पर पहला अधिकार मुसलमानों का है। इसका मतलब ये संपत्ति इकट्ठी करके किसको बांटेंगे? जिनके ज्यादा बच्चे हैं उनको बांटेंगे।
And that the opposition plans to take benefits away from the lower caste and give them to Muslim voters. These remarks alarmed critics with their communal overtones.
I mean, communal overtones is a very mild way of putting it. During his campaign, Mr. Modi was calling people intruders. Mr. Modi was talking about those who produce more children. Mr. Modi was talking about Mangal Sutra, a very sacred ornament that married women in India wear. He was talking about Mujra, which akin to cabaret.
There was a certain sense of fatigue, even a sense of, I'll not call it disgust, but I would say a certain sense of unacceptability of the distasteful, constantly shrill campaign on this Hindu-Muslim trope, which people's perception were being used as a means to deflect attention from issues of real concern to people, like unemployment, prices, rural distress, inequality.
So, of course, the critics and the opposition and the journalists may be more alarmed at the rhetoric that the BJP uses, or selective treatment for different communities. But by and large, I think the people have not seen violence on the streets as we have seen in the past. And over the past few years, we have not had major riots.
Another BJP move was seen as divisive. It promised in its election manifesto to implement a uniform civil code, or UCC, in the country if it came to power. A UCC envisions one law for all religious communities in matters such as marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption. In February this year, the small northern state of Uttarakhand ruled by the BJP, implemented the UCC. It was hoping the state law would provide a template for the whole nation. Historian and author Lokesh Ori runs a school in Uttarakhand's capital, Dehradun, where he has seen UCC in practice.
So I think the Uniform Civil Code was a good idea as long as it was meant for, equal rights for everyone. It was meant for, we were told that now Muslim girls would also have inheritance rights. So some of the provisions are quite forward looking, but some of the provisions are also very, very regressive. Like for instance, the provision on live-in relationships, and especially having to get the live-in relationship registered and then declaring non-registration a criminal offense. This is like moral policing, that you want to police over the morals of the individual and curtail their rights and their liberal ideas.
More importantly, many Muslims saw the UCC as a curb on their religion. In India, some Muslim practices are governed by Islamic rather than state law. The UCC would outlaw practices like polygamy and marrying close relatives, which are currently permissible under Islamic law.
There are a large number of Dalit vote and the Muslim vote. If you combine the Muslim and the Dalit vote, it accounts for roughly 40% of the total voters. The way Dalit moved towards Samajwadi Party and the way Muslims got consolidated behind Samajwadi Party, I think that is what did damage to the BJP, and we know the results.
Samajwadi Party, a part of the opposition alliance, emerged the biggest winner in India's largest state, Uttar Pradesh. Muslims make up about 1 in 5 voters here. BJP would lose badly in the state. It slipped from 62 seats in 2019 to 33 seats this time round.
He thought that by polarizing and by dividing the electorate, he's going to win the election. I think Indian people got up, stood firm there and said, we don't want to be divided. Why don't you talk about development? Why don't you talk about what you've done for us in the last 10 years?
The BJP, on the other hand, say that by going after the Muslim bloc, it is the Congress that played the identity politics card.
It's a matter of shame that in all these years, the so-called secular governments who call themselves non-communal have just been using Muslims as vote banks, have really done nothing in terms of microcredit schemes, in terms of sanitation, in terms of employment and employability, in terms of skill enhancement, in terms of education opportunities.
As for Uttarakhand, the state of the UCC experiment, the BJP swept all 5 seats. Their victory here puts some perspective on the party's performance.
It is only the second time that a sitting Prime Minister has been re-elected to office for 3 consecutive terms. So that in itself is historic. This is the first time that has happened after Prime Minister Nehru, who was India's first Prime Minister, who had a lot of momentum from the freedom movement. So the second part is he has won 240 seats. So look at that quantum as well. The third part is that BJP alone has the number of 240. The second biggest party elected in our parliament has a strength of 99. The third largest party has a strength of 37.
Anti-incumbence is a factor that you must have seen all over the world. In every democracy it works. So tiredness sets in. People want a change. So is it a big setback? No. But would I have been happier if we got 300 plus? Yes.
Nonetheless, if divisive policies are indeed unpopular, it could impact how Modi governs in his 3rd term.
Since he would be leading a coalition government, I think he will face difficulties on some of the issues on which consensus would be very difficult. Maybe one nation, one election, UCC, uniform, and some of those issues.
But could there be a deeper issue fueling anti-incumbency? Beneath the broad, rosy picture of the Indian economy, there is a creeping sense of unhappiness. Just 2 months before the elections, displeasure at the Modi government was evident on the streets. Thousands of farmers marched to protest proposed farm reforms.
आतंकवाद छोड़िए, अपनी आवाज पर हम उठाएंगे ही, कहेंगे और किससे कहेंगे? दिल्ली भी ऐसा है कि जो जाएंगे अपनी आवाज बता ऐसा है कि प्रधानमंत्री जी से कहने का तो हमारा हक है या नहीं है?
The marches continued a movement which began 4 years ago. In 2020, tens of thousands of farmers protested for months against 3 farm laws passed by the Modi government. Currently, India imposes a price floor on key crops, with the government guaranteeing a minimum price to farmers. This is known as the Minimum Support Price, or MSP. The farm laws were introduced to allow more market forces into the sector, allowing farmers the freedom to sell their output to whoever they want. Prime Minister Modi argued this would liberalize the market and improve productivity. But farmers' unions were worried this would drive prices down, causing a fierce backlash. Narendra Singh Huda in Rohtak took part in the farmers' rallies 4 years ago.
और जब आंदोलन आहिस्ता आहिस्ता बढ़ना शुरू हो गया तो हमारे को गिरफ्तार किया गया। सबसे पहले दिल्ली में जो है मजनू टीला साहब के पास हमने आंदोलन में गर्मी लाने के लिए, आंदोलन को तेज़ करने के लिए मजनू टीला साहब महात्मा गांधी मार्ग को रोका था और हमारे को 2 दिन के अंदर 2 दिन जेल में रखा, तिहाड़ जेल में इन लोगों ने। उसके बाद छोड़ दिया हमारे को। फिर हमने अर्धनग्न प्रदर्शन किया 28 नवंबर 2020 को पार्लियामेंट के गेट पे हमारे को गिरफ्तार किया गया।
The 2020 laws were eventually rolled back, but many farmers haven't been assuaged.
अरे हमारी मांग पूरी कहाँ करी? आज भी खनौरी बॉर्डर और शंभू बॉर्डर के ऊपर किसान बैठा है। पराली के नाम पे वो कहते हैं प्रदूषण फैलाता है किसान। किसान का पूरे टोटल जो प्रदूषण फैलता है उसमें 8% हिस्सेदारी है किसान जो फाने जलाता है उसकी। फैक्ट्री वाले फैलाते हैं प्रदूषण, तो उनके ऊपर कोई कार्रवाई नहीं। किसान का कोई खसम खुशाई नहीं, किसान के ऊपर कार्रवाई करते हैं ये लोग।
While agriculture only accounts for about 15% of India's GDP, it hires about 40% of its workforce. Farm labourers make up a sizable portion of the poor in India. Meanwhile, climate change continues to add pressure on farm incomes. As the farmers' protests continued into May, parts of India were hit with temperatures above 50 degrees Celsius.
एक बार 2011 में लगभग बाढ़ आई थी, उससे किसान को बहुत नुकसान हुआ था। उसके बाद 2016 में आई, तब भी बहुत नुकसान हुआ, बिल्कुल 0 लेवल पर चले गया था किसान। पिछले साल अधिक वर्षा होने के कारण सब फसल नष्ट हो गई थी। हरिद्वार ज़िले के अंदर बिल्कुल सब फसल नष्ट हो गई थी। किसान को बहुत नुकसान हुआ इसका। इस बार गर्मी इतनी अधिक है कि खेत में काम करने में असक्षम है किसान। बहुत ज़्यादा गर्मी हो रही है।
At the heart of the farmer protests is the question of whether development under Modi has been equitable. Income inequality and joblessness were key issues heading into the election. While India has grown rapidly under Prime Minister Modi, the wealth gap has also widened. According to the World Inequality Lab, the top 10% in India hold about 65% of the country's wealth. The top 1%, over 40%.
The inequality gap has probably historically become the highest in India today. It's not as if we are not growing as the fastest economy of the world. In fact, we have, if I'm not wrong, the third largest number of US dollar billionaires in the world. But we also have the largest number of those who live in abject poverty. And while the numbers of the poor have reduced over time, it is a gap that needs to be bridged.
At the same time, the unemployment rate in India rose to 8.1% in April, an increase from 7.4% in March this year, according to Centre for Monitoring Indian Economy. The jobless rate increased in both urban and rural India. The CMIE said unemployment hit a two-year high last October. Among graduate youths, about 4 in 10 are jobless.
Why is there inequality? Inequality is there because of inequality of opportunities, and inequality of opportunities is basically of that of education and health. Similarly, unemployment. Unemployment is because development is slow. We need to grow rapidly. Rural distress, again the same issue. Slow development. So running behind all three of the issues that you have brought up is the need for rapid development.
While campaigning, the INDIA opposition seized on these issues to attack Modi's government, painting the Prime Minister as favouring the rich.
पूंजीवाद के एजेंट बनी हुई है ना मोदी सरकार। तो सरकार वरकार कुछ नहीं, मोदी एजेंट है, अमित शाह एजेंट है। इन्होंने कॉरपोरेट को बेच दिया हमारा देश, रेल बेच दी, भेल बेच दी, जेल बेच दी, स्टेशन बेच दिए, वो हवाई अड्डे बेच दिए, जहाज बेच दिए, छोड़ा कौन सा सेक्टर? नौकरियां जो है ताले लग गए, सरकारी नौकरियां कहीं रही नहीं।
Meanwhile, the opposition promised their own measures to uplift the poor, which resonated with some voters like Virendra when it came time to mark their ballots.
बिल्कुल दिया है, इंडिया ब्लॉक को वोट दिया है। अरे अल्टरनेट देखिए ना, जब उधर से इंडिया ब्लॉक ने अपना घोषणा पत्र जारी किया, वे हम जो है किसान को कर्ज मुक्त करेंगे, एमएसपी खरीद गारंटी कानून बनाएंगे, 1 लाख रुपए सालाना देंगे उसको, और जो है 30 लाख नौकरियां देंगे, पक्की नौकरी देंगे, इन्होंने वायदा किया जनता।
However, there are questions over the sustainability of the opposition's promises. For example, economists estimate that Congress' proposed minimum support price to farmers could add an extra 17 to 30% to the government's budget.
You know, the problem with India bloc is, one, that they don't have a leader. 2, they don't have a vision. 3, the entire mission is to get rid of Modi. They have a lot of ideas and they make these announcements as to how they will distribute the freebies and give gifts and donations and charity. But they don't know how they will even raise this kind of money. So they're just promising that we will, you know, our government will be giving you an ATM card and you can just take out money. So that doesn't work.
In the wake of the election results, opposition leader Rahul Gandhi lauded the poor for BJP's muted performance, claiming that India's poorest and backward stood up to save the constitution. But it is unclear how true this is. After all, the BJP lost only 1% of vote share nationwide. And counterintuitively, in some states where poverty was reduced, the party still lost seats, while sweeping in Odisha, one of India's poorest states. Nonetheless, unemployment and more equitable growth will likely be a priority for Modi's third term, a point the Prime Minister made in his speech when he opened the 18th parliamentary session.
साथियों, विकसित भारत के हमारे संकल्प को पूरा करने के लिए हम सबका दायित्व है। हम मिलकर के उस दायित्व को निभाएंगे। जनता का विश्वास हम और मजबूत करेंगे। 25 करोड़ नागरिकों का गरीबी से बाहर निकलना एक नया विश्वास पैदा करता है कि हम भारत को गरीबी से मुक्त करने में बहुत जल्द सफलता प्राप्त कर सकते हैं और ये मानव जाति की बहुत बड़ी सेवा होगी।
Modi will have to see that the policies do not encourage jobless growth. He will have to invest heavily in skilling the educated so that they are well equipped to find jobs.
I think going forward 5 years, one of the critical policy bottlenecks before the government would be how do you attract manufacturing and manufacturing related jobs in India? How do you make India attractive to these global corporations and global investors? Ensuring that India continues to grow at close to 8% is going to remain a challenge. The second thing, having growth which is job inducing, is also going to be pivotal.
You need some welfare measures, but the main challenge in India is how to target it properly. You need to give it to the vulnerable sections. And that, I think, the NDA government and BJP has made several successful moves, particularly with Aadhaar linkage, direct benefit transfer. I think you will see this two-pronged strategy, rapid development and targeted welfare.
But this time around, pushing through reforms could be harder for Prime Minister Modi. How will he manage a coalition government for the first time amid increasing public disenchantment?
और हम मिल करके दोस्तों एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा 2047 विकसित भारत.
Prime Minister Modi is undeterred by the poll setback. He has repeated his promise of making India a developed nation in a quarter of a century. So, what will Modi's third term look like? For one, the government's composition is different. Previously, the BJP was able to push through legislation with their parliamentary majority. But this time round, the Prime Minister must rely on his coalition partners in the National Democratic Alliance to remain in power. Already, both of BJP's coalition allies have asked for billions in aid for their constituencies, putting pressure on the government's budget.
There are lots of to and fro, lots of compromises to make when you lead a coalition government. You can't roll out policies or the programs on your own. I think you need to hear to others, you need to listen to others, you need to make adjustment, because there are two big alliance partners. JDU has 12 members in the parliament, and then Telugu Desam party has 16 members. They would definitely want like some bigger say in the government, maybe bigger ministries, because they have to tell to the voter in their own state what the party has been able to give back to them.
So far, it seems things are a status quo. Key ministries like Defence, Finance and Foreign Affairs remain helmed by BJP stalwarts. Less important ministries were given to the allies.
I never underestimate Prime Minister Modi. He has a certain vision for India of a developed, Viksit Bharat, developed India. He has set a target of 2047. He may have policies which help India to reach that goal. He may show enough persuasive and consultative powers to carry his allies along to implement it and also win the support of the people. But for doing that, there are some elements of his style of functioning which he will have to change. It will have to be a far more consultative process.
However, in August last year, Prime Minister Modi faced a no-confidence motion. It ultimately did not pass. Modi 3.0 will need BJP allies to remain on this side of the aisle to fend off any similar challenges.
Running a coalition sometimes means you step aside and you let others take the center stage. Mr. Modi doesn't like anybody to take the center stage, so I'm not very certain if he'll be able to do this.
There is absolutely no doubt Prime Minister Modi is going to complete his 5 years in office and will keep leading India and carrying India's voice on various global platforms as well.
On the global front, the Prime Minister will also face opportunities and challenges in an increasingly multipolar world. There are also increasing tensions on the India-China border, with both sides militarizing their side of the boundary.
China is very different from China under Chairman Mao Zedong. It's almost a developed country, it's getting there, and rich people do not like to fight. And a growing India, rapidly growing India, do you have any option but to have good relations between these two, one superpower and would-be superpower? I don't think so. The economic interest will prevail. China is one of our major trade partners, and trade partners normally don't fight.
Modi will also be challenged by a reinvigorated opposition, buoyed by their successes, though this form of divisive politics have led to some voter apathy. Low voter turnout at the start of the election was thought to have hurt the BJP. In the final tally from the Election Commission, 2024 voter turnout was about 1.6% lower than 2019. Kolkata, in the eastern state of Bengal, British India's former capital. The bustling, congested city was won handily by the opposition TMC party. Anindya Banerjee is Kolkata's cultural icon. A celebrated musician, Banerjee was the student of Sarat Maestro Ali Akbar Khan.
আমি তো আসলে একটা সাংগীতিক পরিবারে জন্মেছি। আমার মা খুব বড় গায়িকা ছিলেন, আমার মামারাও কেউ সরোদ, কেউ বেহালা, কেউ তবলা বাজাতেন। তো আর আমি মামার বাড়িতে মানুষ, ফলে আমার একটা সাংগীতিক প্রভাব আমার জীবনে তো ছোটবেলা থেকেই ছিল।
When it came time to vote, Anindya did not pick the BJP nor the opposition. Instead, he pressed the button for none of the above, or Nota.
আমার চেনা জানা অনেকে নোটায় দিয়েছে, এমনকি অনেকে তো বাড়ি থেকে বেরোয়ও নি, মানে যে গরমেও যেতে হবে, নোটাতেও যেতে চাইনি আর কি। হারিয়েছি, আমরা ঠিক বিশ্বাস করতে পারছি না যে একে বা এদেরকে ভোট দিলে কি আমরা সত্যি আমাদের কিছু হবে, বা আমরা সাধারণত লোকে সবসময় চায় লাভ, তারা কি লাভ করতে চলেছে, ফলে সেই লাভটা আমরা কি সত্যি লাভবান হতে পারবো?
Nota is a choice given to voters since 2013, following a Supreme Court directive to the Election Commission. It allows voters to express their rejection of all candidates contesting a seat. This year, at least 6.3 million people preferred Nota.
আমাদের কি এখন তো এটা ডেমোক্রেসি কি বলা যায়, এখন তো দেখা যাচ্ছে এটা ডেমোকুর্সি, মানে সবাই কুর্সি মানে চেয়ারের জন্যেই ভোট দেয় আর কি। তবে নিশ্চয়ই একটা সময় তো ছিল গণতন্ত্রকে, সংসদীয় গণতন্ত্রের লোকে খুবই বিশ্বাস করতো, এখনও যে করে না তা না, কিন্তু আগে যে দলগুলো যেভাবে কাজ করেছে বা দলের যারা নেতা ছিলেন তাদের যা মানে বৈশিষ্ট্য ছিল, সেই চারিত্রিক থেকে আরম্ভ করে রাজনৈতিক বৈশিষ্ট্য, সেগুলো অনেকটা ছোট হয়ে গেছে, লাঘব হয়ে গেছে, এবং লোকে কোনো কারণে আস্থা পাচ্ছে না। এদের এখন এত সবাইয়ের একটা নিজেদের প্রতি এত ইগো যেটাকে বলা হয় বেড়ে গেছে, সেইটা এরা করছে না। এরা যদি এই ইগো টিগো সরিয়ে আগেকার দিনে যেরকম ছিল সেই রকম রাজনীতিতে ফিরে যায়, যে দেশের জন্য দশের জন্য তারা সত্যি কিছু করে, তাহলে আমার মনে হয় এরা প্রত্যেকেই আবার সুষ্ঠুভাবে আমাদের এখানে রাজনৈতিক চর্চাটা হবে।
In the final analysis, while the BJP failed to clinch a majority on its own, at 240 seats, they remain by far the largest single party in parliament. At the same time, predictions of the opposition's demise and a one-party state did not materialize. For some, the real winner of the contest was India's democracy.
There was this fear of ghost, the unknown fear that democracy is being eclipsed. I always thought no, Indian democracy is alive and kicking, and this time I have been proved right.
We have a stronger opposition to question authoritarian policies. So I think it's very good for Indian democracy, and only the genius of the Indian people and their democratic instincts could have found the solution. They have ensured perhaps a less arrogant, divisive and undemocratic government. In the final tally of numbers, they have also in a sense voted for continued stability at the center, while the opposition, though much strengthened, will not in a position to form an unsustainably khichdi government or a ragtag coalition government, which is unworkable. So the voter has, in his or her wisdom, created the best solution in a difficult time.
As for the BJP and its supporters, with the Prime Minister promising to work at 3 times the speed for 3 times the result in his 3rd term, Modi magic is not over yet.
Yes, I have voted for BJP. Look, the changes we have noticed in last 10 years. I have seen Mr. Modi doing things which no leaders have even dared of thinking of doing it. He has been there, he has achieved so much, he has delivered so much of things.
India will continue on its journey for economic reforms over the next 5 years. The international audience need not worry that India is going to derail its economic reforms agenda.
This will be a strong government, this will be a stable government, this will run smoothly. Narendra Modi is at the helm of affairs, he leads BJP and he leads NDA, and this is a historic win for Prime Minister Modi, and I think it is his commitment to the people of India that he's got this opportunity and mandate again.